She boarded the plane like anyone else. Calm, quiet, just another passenger heading home. But before the flight could even take off, a single careless act turned her journey into something no one could have imagined. Whispers spread, eyes narrowed, and the air inside that cabin grew heavier by the second. What started as a simple mistake soon revealed something far darker, an ugly truth hiding in plain sight. And when she finally decided she had enough, the entire flight came to a standstill. What could push one woman to bring a plane full of people to its knees? For her, flying was nothing new. She had worked hard for this life. Steady job, loving family, a well-earned vacation waiting at the other end of the flight. Traveling was supposed to be routine, almost boring in its familiarity. She knew the drill. The cramped seats, the safety announcements, the hum of engines as the plane prepared for takeoff. But beneath her calm smile was a quiet pride. Every trip reminded her how far she'd come. She wasn't just another passenger. She was a woman who had fought through doors that were once closed to her. A woman who carried herself with dignity, even in spaces where she wasn't always welcomed. Still, even she couldn't ignore the subtle looks. The quick glances that lingered just a little too long. The way some people shifted in their seats when she walked past. She'd learned to push those things aside, to focus on her destination and the life waiting for her beyond the flight. What she didn't know was that this trip would be different. That a careless mistake, so small it could have been brushed off, would instead unravel into something much bigger. By the time the plane's wheels touched the runway again, she wouldn't just be another traveler going home. She would be at the center of a story that no one on board could forget. The first sign of trouble came in an instant. A cold splash across her blouse. The flight attendant's drink tray tipping, amber liquid soaking through the fabric. Gasps rippled through the row, followed by an awkward silence. The attendant's eyes widened, but not with the embarrassment of an honest mistake. No, her expression hardened, as if the blame belonged to the woman she had just drenched. "Napkins are up front," the attendant muttered, dismissing her with a wave, already turning to the next passenger. No apology, no offer to help, just a smirk that left the woman frozen in disbelief. Around her, the stares began, some curious, some judgmental, a few quietly shaking their heads as if they'd seen this kind of thing before. She pressed the soaked fabric against her chest, the sting of humiliation far sharper than the cold drink itself. It wasn't just the accident. It was the way the attendant looked at her, as though she wasn't worthy of common decency. But then came the whispers. A couple of rows back, voices rose in hushed tones, the kind meant to be overheard. Always making a scene, one passenger muttered. Another chuckled, typical. She stiffened, her pulse quickening. She hadn't said a word, yet already the narrative was being written against her. Minutes ticked by, and every glance felt heavier, every breath harder to draw. When she finally pressed the call button, the attendant returned, arms crossed. Yes. The word was sharp, clipped. The woman asked, quietly, politely, for something to clean up with. A towel, maybe even just tissues. The attendant's reply was a dagger, cloaked in politeness. "We have limited supplies, ma'am. You'll have to manage." And then she walked away. Her cheeks burned, not just from anger, but from the realization that everyone around her had witnessed the exchange. Some averted their eyes, unwilling to get involved. Others looked on, half amused, half annoyed, as if she were the problem. And that's when the shift happened. The humiliation twisted into resolve. She had endured too many moments like this, too many times of swallowing her pride to keep the peace. Not today. Not here, 30,000 feet above the ground, trapped in a cabin where every pair of eyes could see the truth. She rose from her seat, her voice steady but unshakably firm. "This is not acceptable." Heads turned. The cabin fell silent. Even the engines seemed to fade beneath her words. The attendant froze mid-step, eyes narrowing, lips pressed into a thin line. Passengers leaned in, sensing the weight of the moment. Some nodded quietly, as though willing her to continue. Others looked restless, caught between discomfort and curiosity. But no one spoke. And then, just as the tension reached its breaking point, she did something no one expected. She demanded the plane be turned around. The cabin erupted. Gasps, protests, disbelief. The attendant's face drained of color. And for the first time all flight, it wasn't just a spill or a glance or a whisper. It was power. Hers. The cabin was no longer just a space for passengers. It had become a stage, and every eye was locked on her. Her shirt still clung damp against her skin, but now it wasn't the spill that burned, it was the silence. The kind of silence that screamed louder than words, filled with judgment, dismissal, and quiet approval of her humiliation. The flight attendant stood rigid, her jaw set, her authority challenged. "Ma'am, please sit down," she said, her voice trembling ever so slightly. But the woman didn't move. For the first time, she felt the weight of years pressing down on her. All the stares, all the subtle slights, all the moments she had let slide to keep the peace. And in this moment, she realized this wasn't just about spilled soda. This was about dignity. She spoke, her words sharp, steady, unshakable. "I will not be treated like I don't matter. Not here. Not today." The cabin stirred, some passengers nodding, others shifting uncomfortably in their seats, unwilling to take sides. The attendant reached for the intercom, her hand trembling. And then, like thunder breaking the air, the announcement came. "The captain has been informed. This flight is being diverted." Gasps exploded. People shouted, cursed, demanded explanations. The woman stood frozen in the chaos, her heart pounding, realizing the enormity of what had just happened. A plane, thousands of feet above the ground, altered its course because she refused to be silent. And in that single moment, the balance of power shifted. She wasn't invisible anymore. She wasn't the quiet passenger meant to endure in silence. She was the center of it all, proof that one voice, steady and unbroken, could shake an entire system. But as the plane began its descent, one question hung heavy in the air. When the wheels touched down, would the world see her as a troublemaker, or finally hear her truth? When the plane touched down, the chaos didn't fade. It shifted. Passengers hurried off, some muttering about delays, others still whispering her name like it was a scandal. The flight attendant avoided her eyes, clinging to procedure, to authority, to anything that might erase the sting of what had just unfolded. But she walked off that plane differently than she had walked on. She wasn't just a passenger anymore. She was a woman who had forced a system to stop, even if only for a moment, and face itself. Her clothes were still damp, but it wasn't the stain that stayed with her. It was the realization that silence had never protected her, and never would. This incident wasn't about spilled soda or diverted flights. It was about something far deeper. The everyday ways racism tries to shrink people down, to make them feel small, invisible, less than human. And the truth is, what happened in that cabin isn't rare. It's part of a larger pattern, repeated in restaurants, offices, classrooms, streets, and skies. She may not have changed the world that day, but she claimed something powerful, her voice, her dignity, her refusal to be erased. And in doing so, she held up a mirror to everyone watching on that plane and beyond. So the question isn't whether she was right to stand her ground. The real question is this: how many more times will stories like hers unfold before we finally decide that enough is enough? Disclaimer: the stories shared on this channel are entirely fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. We believe in a world where everyone enjoys equal rights under the law and where society continues to progress in fairness, development, and humanity. Our goal is to share thought-provoking stories that inspire positive change. Any resemblance to real people, events, or organizations is purely coincidental. These stories are not based on actual individuals or occurrences and carry no political or religious implications.